fear and excitement feel the same in the body,
Mhm.
but it's just that mindset. So when I start to think, "Ooh, this is kind of scary," I'm like, "No, no, it's exciting." And just that little subtle shift. And I may still have the voice that says, "No, no, it's kind of scary," but I've never died from doing something scary.
Be confident, be bold, be authentic, but don't forget to take action. This is Ordinary to Badass, where our stories empower women to step into the spotlight of their own lives and pursue what they're truly passionate about. It's time to step into the arena and become more than just extraordinary. It's time to become a badass with your host, Marie Sonneman.
Welcome to Ordinary to Badass, the podcast to help women lead louders in rooms that were not built for them. I'm your host, Marie Sonneman. And if you've ever felt like you're crushing it behind the scenes, holding it all together, but still feeling out of sync with your leadership style, then this episode is for you. Today, I'm talking to Jenny Lytle. And when I introduce her, I'm a jerk and I say Little. Her last name is actually Lytle. Jenny is a former nurse turned life coach, and she helps women go from burnout to bold, and they lead from a place of alignment instead of overwhelm. This episode is pure confidence without apology energy. Jenny redefines boldness by regulating her nervous system, using or trusting her inner pace, and leading without apology, even when it doesn't match the current narrative of having to hustle hard. But before we jump in, can I ask you a quick favor? If you're loving the Ordinary to Badass podcast, especially these new updated ones, will you head on over to iTunes, leave a 5-star rating and a review? It's so important that other women join the movement. And if they hear it from badasses like you, then they're more likely to. So again, just head on over to iTunes, leave a 5-star rating and review. And of course, screenshot it. You can send it to me on Instagram at Ordinary to Badass. I would be super grateful. Okay, first, let's get into the badass move of the week. I'm so excited for this. I'm loving these little segments. What are you thinking of them? Let me know. Again, Instagram at Ordinary to Badass, DM me or throw some in your stories and let me know what you think. Okay, this week's shout out goes to Rachel on IG. That foodie Rachel, that's her handle. And she responded to one of my self care prompts by saying that how she deals with self care as a manager is by going to the pedicure because the manager needs her me time. And she has nailed it. She has it right. You absolutely need your me time. You like how I got the finger pointing going on there? As women, we often want to do everything for everyone and help everybody out at the expense of ourselves. But you cannot be the best leader possible if you're not taking time for you, if you're not doing self care. That is the leadership flex, is when you're actually taking time for yourself to rejuvenate and heal and get better, to get your energy back for the next day at work. You can't expect the people you supervise to have work-life balance if you don't, right? It starts with you. You're the leader. You're leading the way. It's good for you to have work-life balance, and then your other people will follow you. It's kind of amazing, actually. When you have boundaries on what you'll do for work and then what you'll do on your own time, like, okay, nope, turn my work phone off at this time. Like, as long as you're not on call or required to do so, then set some boundaries that make it healthy. Or maybe just during dinner time, you put your phone away. Or if you're playing with your kids, you put your phone away. But any little thing you can do to just take a pause, take a break, take a breath, that is so helpful and makes you an even better leader. I say rest, rejuvenation, they're not just a luxury. They are a strategy. That is what helps you get to the next level. There's that dang finger again. So tell me, what are you doing for me time this week? Tag me at Ordinary to Badass. I want to shout you out too. I want to know what you're doing for your self care. Okay, the next segment is from the inbox. This is the DM question of the week. She asked, how do I stay grounded in my values when my leadership style isn't like those around me? And I got to tell you, this one hits deeply because I know what it's like to be different than all of your coworkers and not have other leaders that look like you. It can be so hard. But leadership, it's not about mimicking the loudest voice in the room. It's about knowing your energy, honoring your nervous system, and leading from your truth. And that's exactly what Jenny breaks down in today's combo. So the next time you feel like you're doing it wrong because you lead with calm, peace, or empathy, remember, you're not wrong. You are just rare. You're a rare diamond, my friend. And that is something to be protected. So I want you to think, yes, I already gave the diamond analogy, but also of being different is like being a lighthouse in a sea of buoys. While buoys float with the current, signaling their presence only when they get bumped into, a lighthouse is strong, it stands tall and is unwavering, and it shines its light regardless of the tides. It doesn't move with the waves, it guides others through them. In leadership, you might not be the loudest or the most conventional, but your steady presence and authentic approach to leading serves as a beacon for others. Your difference isn't a flaw, it's a guiding light in turbulent waters. So before we move on, remember, your uniqueness is a strength. Embrace it, and you'll not only navigate your own way, but you'll illuminate the way for others. Welcome to Ordinary to Badass. Whether you're ordinary or badass, I'm so glad you're here. Today's guest is Jenny Lytle. Jenny, thank you so much for being on the show. Excited to have you.
Well, thank you so much, Marie. I'm glad to be here.
So before we go any further, I've got to ask you, do you consider yourself ordinary or badass?
Well, I've thought about this because I know this is something that you ask, and I think up until a few years ago, I would have said ordinary, but now I guess I'd say badass because I am stepping outside of what I would have considered ordinary, and it's kind of badass for me anyway.
Yeah, I love that. So what was it for you? Like, what was the changing point for you to feel ordinary to feeling badass? Was it one thing in particular that happened, or was it a series of events?
I think it was probably a series of events. I can't think of one particular thing that I was like, that's it. But it's just those little steps that I've taken, some littler than others, some bigger than others, but just really stepping outside of my comfort zone, leaning into what I believe is my purpose, which is different than what I had originally thought it would be. And yeah, and just kind of figuring out like who I am. So it all kind of started with a series of events way back when, and there was a time when I realized that like I had no idea who I was. And so that was kind of a big moment for me when I still remember I was walking in the park and I thought, who am I? And that led me on this journey to kind of figure that out. And that's led me to today. And that was about 8 years ago. So
Oh, awesome. So this stepping out of our comfort zone thing, it's hard. And I think it's always something that you have to push yourself to do. But once you started stepping out of your comfort zone, did you find it easier to keep doing it?
yes. Now, maybe not at first. At first it was still like every time it was a struggle. But now when I feel that fear, when I feel that discomfort, that unease, then I'm like, okay, well, it's just time to lean into it because when I do, then usually there's something great that comes from it. And it doesn't take me nearly as long to get to that place where I'm like, okay, let's jump, and then I'm not nearly as nervous when I do. It's a quicker thing. And I realized that read a couple years ago that fear and excitement feel the same in the body,
Mhm.
but it's just that mindset. So when I start to think, "Ooh, this is kind of scary," I'm like, "No, no, it's exciting." And just that little subtle shift. And I may still have the voice that says, "No, no, it's kind of scary," but I've never died from doing something scary, so so I just go ahead and jump.
That's funny. Is that the new parameter? If you
Yeah,
never died from it, okay, you're
exactly.
good.
Exactly. I've lived to tell about it, so it's all a win.
Yeah. So, Jenny, I'm so excited to talk to you, to hear more of your story, more about how you found out who you are. But first, will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, yes. So sorry, it's allergy season already here, I think. So yes, I'm Jenny Lytle. I have been a nurse for 30 years. I've been married for 27 years. I live in Indiana. We have 6 boys and 7 grandchildren. And I have spent the last 19 years of my nursing career working in hospice and end of life care. And so that has definitely brought a different perspective on a lot of things, but I also found that I was I really found a lot of my identity, a lot of my purpose in my work. And then when things started changing with my work, especially women who are in some sort of caregiving or caretaking role, which really is most of us in one way or another, whether it's professionally or at home, or we're all taking care of everybody but ourselves. And so that made me really passionate about helping women to understand, like, not only is it not selfish to take care of yourself, but it's essential if you want to continue to do the things that matter most.
So was it your mom's passing that kind of sparked this for you or made you realize that you were passionate about it?
That's what kind of sealed the deal. So I knew that something had to give because of my own experience with burnout, with just trying to figure out like how to fit me into the equation because I had put work at the forefront for so long. My family as well, but really, for a few years, it was work that was my primary focus. And then while I was doing that work on myself, when I realized that something needed to be done differently, then I really realized how essential it is to figure out how to care for ourselves because my mom passed away suddenly and she had had health issues, but she put most things to the side because she was too busy taking care of everybody else. She was also a nurse,
Mm.
and she kept thinking that she would take care of herself when these particular things got done for and our to-do list never gets done and there's always people who need things. And so that was when it really made me aware that, like, there are so many women who need to understand that in order to do the things that we're called to do, to care for the people that we care about, then we've got to take care of ourselves. We've got to figure out how to do that and how to do it without feeling guilty.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting that we see something in other people. Like you could see your mom and how she didn't take care of herself and she's so busy taking care of everybody else. But then when it comes to us, it's like, oh, it's okay. I can do it all. We think we can do
Right,
it all.
right.
It's so obvious when we're looking at somebody else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I joke that now that's why I like talking so much about self-care now because it keeps me from being a hypocrite. I realize that, okay, like these things that I'm saying, oh yeah, I need to be doing those a little bit more because it's easy to fall back into those patterns. And it's definitely a process for
Yeah.
sure.
So can you take us back to the time when you're like, who am I? Like
Mhm.
you're realizing that and kind of how you were feeling, what was going on inside, and then what did you do from there? Like what was your first action step or how did you start moving to find out who you were?
Mhm. Yeah, so I'm somebody, I don't have a great memory of a lot of things, but I very distinctly remember I had just taken my kids and dropped them off at school, and I had left my job about, maybe a couple of weeks before that. And I was really pretty excited because it had been a long time coming. I had worked for the same agency for 11 and a half years, and it was time to leave, but it was hard to leave because it was like a family. Dysfunctional one maybe, but it was like a family, and it became very clear that I needed to leave. I and I did. And at first I was really excited. I'd take the kids to school and I'd drop them off and I'd go to the park and walk, and I felt like I had this like new lease on life, now I'm gonna figure out what I'm gonna do with from now on. Well, I in that excitement, I was just walking along one day and I was listening to some music, and then it just kind of stopped me in my tracks. I thought, who am I? Because I had so much of my identity was wrapped up in my work and in being a hospice nurse and in being a hospice nurse for this company, and it was it was I mean it was just it was really a very jarring sensation because I knew that I had liked my job and I knew that there were times when I had horrible boundaries like most of the time, but really just figuring out like, uh, wow, I don't I don't know who I am now. And my kids were getting older. So like I said, we had 6 boys. We were a blended family. And so the 2 biological ones, when I had started working hospice, they were in kindergarten and preschool. And I put them in preschool so that I could start there. And I felt like I always had all this time with them. And then I realized right when I was leaving work, I thought, like, I had all this time, but now they're a junior and a senior in high school. And so, like, they're getting ready to move on. And when all the other kids were out of the house, and so I mean, I really, for about a month, I just kind of went into a dark place. I did my walks and all of that, but it was a lot of, just kind of a lot of confusion, really. And now my faith is something that's important to me, but it had kind of fallen by the wayside as well. And so I just spent some time kind of walking and doing some praying and some self-reflecting and just kind of figuring out, like, what do I want things to look like? And then I started taking time to really think about, like, what what do I want? What does matter to me? And it wasn't things that I had really thought about before, or at least not in so long that I couldn't remember it. And so once I kind of started doing that, and I tried some different things, I went through some coaching myself. And I had heard a friend who had talked about life coaching and how she went through this program. And I thought, well, you know what? That sounds kind of cool, because I've never been like a nursey nurse in terms of being like super medical and all of that, like, I mean, yes, I know some things, of course, but really what I love is the one-on-one interaction, the interpersonal part of it. I'm definitely more emotional and kind of touchy-feely in that way. And so I loved I loved that. And I loved that it helped me to dig a little deeper into my own life and what I wanted that to look like. And I just started spending some time on challenging some of the things that I just had automatically believed. Like, I had a huge fear of failure. And yeah, and so that's where all of that started for me.
And what got you into helping other nurses?
Well, so as I did end up going back to nursing, I took a little bit of time off, and then I did some temporary staffing kind of stuff, and I did some home health, and I liked all of it. But there is a part of me that likes hospice a lot, and I did a travel contract too. And so that was definitely a step outside my comfort zone, because I've never not lived in Kokomo. So, and I moved to Kentucky for a little bit away from the family. And I just, well, I realized in listening to nurses with the different places that I had gone, that so many of us really struggle with that. I feel like, well, I don't have time to take care of myself. And I'm a caregiver. That's what I do. Self-care is selfish, or I've done a few of those things, but that doesn't really help. And that helped me to realize that not only do we need to take care of ourselves, but we need to understand that, like, it's not something that we should feel bad about. It really is something that's necessary, and that it's not one size fits all. So the things that make me feel great, that help to fill my cup and rejuvenate me, may be completely different than the things that do that for you. And that's okay. But we have to, like, give ourselves permission to figure that out and take a little bit of time to figure it out. And it doesn't have to be anything that takes a lot of time or effort, but it does take a little bit of intentionality. And so that's something that, I mean, I can speak nurse speak, and be able to get my point across to a lot of them, because we are dealing with a lot of the same kind of things. And that, the cumulative grief that comes with taking care of patient, especially if we're talking about hospice patients. When you're surrounded by patients that are dying, it takes a toll. And the same if you're, working in many different specialties, or if you're in law enforcement, all of those things, they all add up. And so nurses are what I focused on primarily, because that's what I know most. But the reality is that the principles that I that I teach and that I focus on are applicable to all of us.
Yeah. So for somebody that's doing caregiving, whether they're doing it, in their line of work or maybe it's for a parent at home, what I think often they probably feel like they don't have enough time. Like
Mhm.
they're short on time as it is. How are they going to have time for themselves, or they don't have time to implement stuff to make them feel better because they got to take care of other people? What would you?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and it's selfish. It doesn't work, or I don't have time. I mean, those are kind of the big three, and I completely get all of them. But I think that's where it comes down to we feel like it has to be something bigger than it is, or that it's got to take more time or energy. And instead, when we focus on those really basic things that at first it's like, what's that going to do? Because I already know that, things like breathing, just really taking time to slow down and, take some deep breaths. And if you feel like you don't have time to do that, then do it in the bathroom. When you're going to the bathroom, sit there for an extra minute and just take some slow deep breaths. I mean, it really does help to reset your nervous system and get you that oomph you need to be able to continue doing the things you're doing. And especially for caregivers who are taking care of a loved one, that's 24/7. So, yes, nursing, going and working, that has its own challenges and they're different, but when you're a family caregiver and you're somebody you're taking care of someone that you deeply care for, but are also in some ways maybe deeply frustrated with, that's a different issue for sure. But a lot of those principles are kind of the same. And so taking time for things like that, trying to prioritize rest. And I know that especially in a home situation that may be difficult. And so if there's ways to get other people involved, whether that be other family members who can, come in and do help with a little bit of respite, kind of care where you're able to get a little bit of time to rest and recharge on your own, or outside organizations if it's something that maybe your family qualifies for some sort of in-home care or hospice care. And and again, kind of reevaluating your thoughts on those things because a lot of it is different than you might initially think. I mean, there's so many hospice misconceptions as well. But being able to really um, just really focus on the little things like that kind of apply to everyone, but then being more specific and figuring out like what is it that I really need? And that's one thing that I ask myself and I encourage my clients to ask themselves when they're just feeling that heaviness or that overwhelm and feeling like there's not enough hours in the day, there's too much to be done, is stop, take a couple of deep breaths, and then just ask yourself like, what do I need most right now? And usually if you just sit there for a minute, it's going to come to you. And so maybe it's I need to go for a walk for a minute, or if you can't leave home or leave somebody alone, then maybe you need to crank up the tunes and have a little dance party and just to get a little bit of exercise, a little change in what you're doing. Maybe it's a nap, maybe it's a snack, drinking water, those very basic kind of things. But also maybe it's some time with a friend, and maybe it's a phone call or going out to a coffee shop and just sitting there and just like enjoying a cup of coffee by yourself for 30 minutes with nobody needing you. Just having a list of those kind of things that really refill your cup and that can be done in small amounts of time.
I think sometimes the struggle is actually asking for help,
Mhm.
or it feels like we can't ask for help, or other people are too busy. What do you say to people that think like, or that don't know how to ask for help?
Right. And most of us that are caregivers, we don't ask for help, we give help. And so one of the things that I think is really important with that is thinking about the way that we feel when we're able to help somebody. When we see somebody struggling and we know like, gosh, they could really use a bit of a break. And if we're able to step in and help with that, then that makes us feel good. And we know that, but then when it comes to reversing it, we don't want to do that because we don't want to impose on anyone. And so, having some of those people in your life that that are the caregiving type, and a lot of us have those kind of people, but again, we don't want to impose on them, and instead kind of challenging that mindset, and instead maybe it would make them feel good to be able to help you in some tangible way. Most of us have somebody that is able to help out some, and it's just a matter of us reaching out and asking. And if for whatever reason, if you're somebody that doesn't have people nearby that are potentially able to help you, then a lot of times there's different organizations, senior organizations. Some of them are paid, but some of them are volunteer organizations that are just able to come and do a little bit of sitting with someone or taking just a little bit of that off your plate. Maybe it's going and getting groceries or spending a little bit of time with someone where maybe you can be in the other room even and just get a little bit of a nap in. So it can take some creativity, but just reaching out and finding out what kind of resources there are, because it's caregiving in any capacity is tough. And when you feel alone, then that just makes it even harder. And so, maybe getting involved in a caregiver support group or things like that. There's so many resources available, but a lot of times people really don't know how to access those or connect with other people.
Yeah. And I would say on the other side of things, what I've learned is when there's somebody in my life that's like a caregiver or wants to do everything for everyone, for me, it's helped to just do something for them, like just bring them dinner, just
Yeah.
we're going out to coffee. When do you want to go?
Right.
As opposed to saying, oh, let me know if I can do anything to help, because they're never going to tell you when they need something to help.
Absolutely.
But if you just
Yeah.
like order them that dinner or just do something for them, sometimes it just makes it a little bit easier. They don't have to make another decision.
Right, right. And that's especially true if somebody is like really in the thick of things and, they're feeling extra stressed or they're going through maybe a big grieving time is being able to just show up and do things in those tangible ways. And sometimes finances can be a struggle too in those situations. And we recently had a friend who was going through a tough time with some sickness and some death and just like a lot of things were going on, and she wasn't able to work as much as she wanted to and all of that. And it was like, look, okay, so what would help you most? And she's definitely very much a caregiver, and she's like, oh, I'm fine. It's like, no, okay, listen, like we're going to do something. So would it be coming over and helping out with this person or some grocery gift cards or what? And then and I'm like, okay, so I need you to answer. She's like, grocery gift cards might not be bad. And I'm like, great, thank you very much. And and I know it's uncomfortable, but now like we all feel good because we were able to help in a way that she needs help that's going to be beneficial. And also she was like, okay, thank you so much. This really like this helps more than you know. And I none of us want to be in that position where we need a little bit of extra help. But all of us want to be somebody who helps somebody out when they need it. So, you gotta
Yeah. And it's like a little bit can go a long way too.
absolutely. Right. And sometimes it's just knowing that somebody cares enough to do something. It doesn't have to be a big grand gesture, but
Yeah.
just knowing that people care.
So earlier you mentioned about being bad at setting boundaries. And I think boundaries is kind of all around this conversation, just because if you are, caring for other people, it's hard to set those boundaries or to say no or to feel like, that it's okay to just walk away or to take a break for yourself or to be happy when somebody else is not doing okay. What
Mhm.
do you now, or what do you suggest to your clients as far as setting boundaries?
Well, I think part of it is understanding that when we say yes to everything, I mean, there's still things that we're saying no to. There's only so many hours in a day. So if I say no to, I mean, if I say yes to these three things over here, then there are other things that I'm going to be saying no to, even if it's my sleep, my my time with my family, my own peace of mind sometimes. And so just being a little more clear on what our priorities are. And that was something that I had to do like early in my work too, was like getting clear on what do I value most and what are the things that are most important to me. And then am I designing my life in a way that I'm able to do those things. And that's a honestly, I mean, it's still it's a constant reevaluation. I look at things and I'm like, okay, well, that got a little my schedule got a little full. So something that I do now is I block out chunks of time for myself. And especially for people who are just getting used to the thought of saying no occasionally, it can be hard to think, well, why wouldn't I do it? I don't have anything else to do right then. And I think that's one of those traps that we can kind of get into. It's like, well, they need help and I don't have to be doing something else. Like I'm not working or I'm not doing whatever during that time period. I encourage my clients to, and I block off time for myself as well. That's just block time. And then you can say, hey, I'm sorry, I'm all booked up. And you are. And something else is not just saying yes in the moment. Because like I want to do everything. Somebody asked me, you want to do that? Well, yeah, I want to do that. It doesn't matter if I've never thought about it before. Of course I want to do it. I like the thought of new experiences. And but just pausing a little bit and being like, okay, you know what? Let me check and get back to you, because then I can take the emotion out of it, the instant wanting to be a people pleaser and wanting to just genuinely be helpful. But I can look at, okay, like what does the rest of my week look like? Is that really going to work out well for me? And sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. And then realizing that like you saying no doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean that you're selfish. It just means that you know your own limitations. And I've also found that when we constantly say yes to things that maybe aren't meant for us, then that could be depriving somebody else of something that they really could excel at. There's a lot of things that I can do. Like as a nurse, I can do a lot of the things that the social worker does or the chaplain does or the aide does. I am not going to do it nearly as well. I mean, that's not my area of expertise, that's not my area of giftedness. And I used to tell patients that when their aide wouldn't come, I was like, "Look, I can give you a bath, but I can tell you it's going to take me longer and it's not going to be nearly as good as your aide does." Because that's just not what I do regularly. And I think that's the thing that we need to remember when it comes to boundaries as well, is trying to live as much in our kind of zone of genius and our giftedness as much as possible, and not just saying yes to everything because we don't want to disappoint people.
It's so good. So, Jenny, let's end with a tip to encourage women who are in the arena fighting for the life that they want.
I would say, first of all, like just give yourself some grace and take a pause and think about, what do you really want? Like, what do you want your life to look like? And we don't we don't stop very often to think about that. We just get so busy with everything, and it's very easy to lose sight of things that maybe once mattered to us, and we just don't really think about them anymore. So taking time to think about, like, what would I like to be different? And then don't let yourself get too overwhelmed by that. And figure out, like, what is one small step that I could take to get me going in that direction. And as you do that, you're gonna mess it up some. You're gonna take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, and then it'll get a little bit easier. And just having that kind of in the back of your mind, and remembering that, I mean, self-care isn't selfish. It's essential if we want to be able to care for others and live our best lives.
And can you tell us how we can find your book and how we can connect with you?
Yes. So everything is at jennylytle.com, and that's JENNYLYTLE. But your listeners can also get a free copy of my book by going to selfcareisn'tselfish.com. That's a little easier to remember maybe than my name. And can get a copy of the digital book there. And then it's available on Amazon in paperback and hardback and Kindle and audiobook.
Thank you so much, Jenny. You've been a total badass and I've enjoyed hearing your story.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I love what you're doing. It's
Oh, thank
exciting.
And with that, we'll end our show. To all the badass women out there, stay in the arena, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, own it and get after it. Okay, I would like to reflect on a quote that Jenny Lytle said because it kept echoing in my mind after the interview. She said, "Slowing down isn't giving up. It's how I got my clarity back." We live in a culture that glamorizes hustle, glorifies burnout, but Jenny, she reclaims stillness and uses that as her leadership move. And I think that is powerful. She left a successful nursing career not because she was done, but because she finally started listening to herself. And I think that is so powerful. So remember, slowing down isn't giving up. It's how you can get your clarity back. So I just got to say that I can absolutely relate to Jenny's story. Being in law enforcement, I used to think that slowing down, that made me weak. If I wasn't hustling, I wasn't committed, that I had to do things at the same pace everybody else did. And that's just not true. And the truth is, if you're buried in overwhelm, you can't lead in alignment. And when I started leading from my own values and not from the noise around me, that's when my confidence came back. That's when everything shifted for me. So, a key takeaway that I want you to remember from this episode is you don't have to be loud to be bold. You don't have to hustle to be seen. You just have to own your pace, your presence, and your power. That's what it's like to lead from alignment and not overwhelm. Okay, the last segment, pop culture punchline. I think this one's my favorite. This episode, it gave me Taylor Swift, Midnight's energy. Not reputation rage, not red heartbreak, but it's soft strength, deep clarity. It's lavender haze. It's You're on Your Own, Kid. Those are both Taylor Swift songs if you're not familiar. Jenny's energy is intentional, centered, and quietly badass. Like Taylor, standing still while owning the whole damn stadium. Okay, if you like this episode, don't keep it to yourself. You gotta share it. Share it with a woman who's burning out at work, trying to do all the things. Text this episode or screenshot it and tag me in your Instagram stories at Ordinary to Badass is where you can find me. And for more ways to lead from alignment and not burnout, grab my free guide, Breaking Barriers, ordinarytobadass.com/barriers. Let's keep flipping the script on what leadership really looks like. And before we get out of here, I want to remind you, keep showing up, keep speaking up, and never ever shrink for a seat at the table because you are a badass and you were born to build it.
Now that you've listened to this episode of Ordinary to Badass, we want to hear from you. Go to our website, ordinarytobadass.com/podcast, and submit your own experience on how you took your life from ordinary to badass and get the chance to be on a future spotlight episode of the show. That's ordinarytobadass.com/podcast. While you're waiting for the next episode of the show, wipe off the sweat, dust off the dirt, and get back in the arena.